Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Speedify Live. I'm hosting today. I'm Brian Prodoehl. I'm the CTO here, and I'm filling in for Alex. And with me today is Kevin.
Hello.
So Kevin is a longtime developer, lead developer on Speedify. So we are live. If you have questions, go ahead and post them, and we will put them up in the chat. I think today we're going to be... Yeah, so today we're talking a bit about AI tools and what we use and what we find helpful. And so if you have any opinions or questions on that, go ahead and post that too. Otherwise, anything about Speedify, go ahead and jump and we will add to the thing here. So early question from Miko, how to add a bank to bypass Speedify. How do we do that, Kevin?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of banks already populated in our list. So if you go into the bypass list and search and see if your bank's there, there should be an option to turn it on. If your bank is not there, let us know. We can look, it might be easy for us to add it. Depending what platform you're on, if you're on a desktop platform, there are Speedify command line options that you can add some manual domains and things like that. If you know the domains that your bank uses, you could try doing that manually. But yeah, if you're on a phone or whatever, we don't have custom options right now. So yeah, let us know if you don't see your bank in the list, and we might be able to add it for you.
All right. Hi, Rick and Rod. Hi, Joda. I think Joda was getting a little upset during the 3-minute countdown. All right. Hey, Rick and Rod. Okay. So yeah. Our question of the day, what AI tools do you guys use? All right, Speedify Babs uses ChatGPT just to clean up verbiage. Helps a lot with posting on social media to give new ideas. Yeah, it's kind of good. What do you use, Kevin? Do you use anything?
Yeah, I mean, I use Copilot, which gives you options for a bunch of different models and stuff, but I use that for development. I'd say I primarily use it as kind of a code completion thing, where I can kind of guess the next things that I'm going to do or fill in the gaps. So particularly if I'm writing one case of something and then it's able to guess the next cases and save me a bunch of time typing a bunch of things, that's where I use it the most now. I don't know, I haven't done as much of talking to it and getting it to build whole elaborate things. I find it more lacking in that area, or at least my experiences so far.
Yeah, I use I used to use ChatGPT a lot, and then around the time of like 4.1, I found that it was starting to give me just dumber and dumber answers, I felt like. So I kind of, at the same time, started trying other models, and I've just been using Claude ever since. And so I still have ChatGPT, and I'll dip into it every once in a while. I think I like it for like image generation for stuff, but yeah, I use Claude a lot for rubber ducking. Are you familiar with rubber ducking, what that is?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you guys aren't familiar with rubber ducking, it's kind of you hit a spot where you're stuck on something. You can kind of explain your problem to a rubber duck, and in doing so, it sort of clarifies your thought process and sort of leads you to the answer. And so I think, yeah, Claude with its pretty big context window and stuff, I can paste stuff in, and it's like in explaining everything to it and getting some basic prompts back from it, I find it helps. I think it helps me get to answers a lot quicker. All right, so John Paul uses Cursor, Claude, and GPT-5. Nice. All right. Yeah, Cursor, tried a handful of the different IDEs, and Cursor's, yeah, that's still the one I settle on as far as like just autocomplete stuff. It seems like, making a big change to a file, I could do like the first 3 changes if I'm making similar changes to it, and then it'll suggest the next 20, and that's right. Like, oh, okay. So yeah, it certainly helps.
I had a pretty similar experience with VS Code and GitHub Copilot. Their integrations they have there, I think, works pretty similar, works pretty well. Code completion stuff. They have agent stuff that I haven't done a whole lot with yet, but it's kind of the new stuff.
How do you like Copilot for GitHub PR reviews?
It's interesting. Yeah, it's hit or miss. I mean, sometimes it's really good at summarizing things or explaining if you have questions about changes in a file. Sometimes it can be really good, and sometimes it can catch things that are valid. Oh, did you mean to do this? And then sometimes it's completely wrong with what it suggests, or it misunderstands things. So hit or miss, but things are getting better, I think.
It has caught some syntax errors, especially stuff like in strings where it's like, I think you probably meant to close this. You're like, I absolutely did. Stuff that sort of gets past the linter and gets past the first quick visual review. And yeah, it has caught some stuff that I'm like, oh, you're absolutely right. So it's pretty interesting. All right.
Also for explaining code, I mean, I've used it going through stuff in the Linux kernel and asking it to explain stuff to me in those files. I've had good experiences with that, of explaining how things work and how things go together, and being able to reference other files and things like that. I found that useful.
Nice. All right. So VM Live Media is using DeepSeek to do tech comparison on devices. All right. Nice. So are you using their cloud hosted, the DeepSeek that's hosted, or are you running it yourself? I think with R1 and stuff, people were pretty excited to get it, and you could run it on a decent graphics card. You could run it. So yeah, sort of interesting to hear if you're going to deepseek.com or whatever, or if you're running it yourself. All right. John Paul with Cursor. You have to select your model. Keep it on auto. It's trash a lot. Yeah, it was interesting. They switched. Yeah, they keep switching the default, it seems like. And so, yeah, I do have it locked in on Claude. All right. Kevin, do you think LLMs have replaced Stack Overflow?
Partially, but they need somewhere to pull that information from, and I'm guessing it was trained on a lot of Stack Overflow stuff. So if that doesn't exist for the future, where is it going to get its information from? So yes and no. I think it's made stuff accessible, like that the people would normally go to Stack Overflow, getting some of those answers to common questions and things like that. It can be useful for that, but I don't know if it completely replaces it.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot, and I think if they can train on people's conversations with it, I think they may not hit that problem where, well, if nobody's posting on Stack Overflow, they'll have nothing to train on. They can sort of train in real time, and people are having, whatever issue getting Windows Update to work again. If there's 20,000 people dealing with getting Windows 11 Update to work again, they're going to know, right? If they're training on that stuff. So I think It may not be a problem. For a while, I thought it was. You look at the traffic for Stack Overflow, and it's basically like, a couple people visiting it every day now. It's sort of, it's on fire a little bit. But yeah, if they can train on everybody's conversations, site kind of solves itself a little bit in real time. So that could be maybe not a problem. But yeah, I think that sort of site, it's tough right now. All right. Yeah, John Paul thinks it kind of has replaced Stack Overflow. Yeah, I mean, so they've posted traffic stuff and how sort of catastrophic it is, but I don't know how recently they've posted things. But yeah, I think between the Google Auto, the AI search result thing, and just people going instinctively to ChatGPT or Claude instead, I don't know how many people are there hanging out anymore. All right, so this is Speedify Live Office Hours. Obviously, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and post them. We have a new release out, right, Kevin? What's up? What's new with Speedify?
Just released, was it yesterday or the day before? I've lost track of the days. But yeah, we just released 15.8 this week. There were some, obviously with a bunch of improvements always in the background, improving things, improving performance, things like that. But in terms of user-facing, so a few releases ago, we added the ability for Speedify to poke your Starlink routers and pull stats from them. And so we expanded and added a lot more information that we can now pull from the Starlink router. So there's even more stuff in there. You can expand it and see stuff about alignment, if that applies to your Starlink dish, and hardware and software versions, and all sorts of other warnings if you've been throttled because you went over your data limit. So lots more information that we can pull from the dishes and alert you on. So that's useful, particularly if you have multiple Starlinks. We can reach out to each of them and pull stats from all of them and display that stuff in the Speedify UI. Where previously trying to jump around between those different Starlinks could be a little bit of a juggling act. We also added a new jitter buffer feature and UI settings for it. So this allows you to selectively specify certain flows of traffic that you want to intentionally add delay to, which can be a little counterintuitive. A lot of times you think, I want things to go as fast as possible, but if you have networks that are very variable or jittery in terms of their latency, or if your bonding networks have very different latencies, sometimes that can cause your effective latency to jump around a lot, and certain applications don't deal well with that. Particularly live streaming is one of them, where it expects kind of a consistent rate of traffic to come through with a consistent delay, and that's how it works best. So with certain streaming protocols, just adding a little bit of delay on top of it, where you're already dealing with some delay getting to the end user anyway. They're not going to notice any difference in the user experience, but for you, it could be a big improvement, performance-wise. So you can selectively go in and add certain ports or domains or IP addresses that you want to add this delay to, and set what you want the delay to be. But it's generally not useful for if you're doing something real-time communication, video calls and things like that, where you're waiting for somebody else to respond. You generally don't want to add a lot of delay to that stuff, because then you have people talking over each other, or you're waiting a long time for responses. So it's not really intended for that. More kind of one-way things where you're streaming something out, or delivering something in, where you're kind of being affected by latency jumping around. So those are two main features. We have other little improvements here and there. But yeah, I think good update. And if you're behind by a few versions, definitely consider updating to the latest version.
Yeah, the expanded Starlink stats. I was looking through them, and there's a lot in there. There's a lot of really interesting stuff. I think people with fixed dishes where they don't automatically orient themselves, I think it's gonna make a big difference for people. I think it's sort of, Starlink has an opinion on where it should be pointed, and it knows where it's pointed. And unless you're really tuned in on it, I think it can be easy to not notice that, it wants to be pointed somewhere else. So yeah, I think people with fixed dishes are gonna start getting some notifications, I think, so it should be good. All right. So John Paul wishes the stats updated in real time.
They do. I mean, how quickly? So I think right now we're updating them every 15 seconds, 30 seconds. So I mean, I guess you mean second by second you want them updating? You know, which particular stats are you interested in looking at that frequently? Because you know, a lot of the ones it seemed like they're fairly static, that they're not going to change that much, so, and we don't want to kind of overwhelm things by poking the Starlink every second. But yeah, let us know if there's particular stats that you think it's reasonable for them to be updated more frequently. Let us know. We can look at that.
Yeah,
some have an option for that. Yeah.
Some of the stuff from the Starlink seems to update every time we pull it, and there's other stuff that just takes a long time for it to change. Yeah, kind of curious what you want to see change in real time, and it may be that we could pull stuff a bit more frequently if it makes sense, but it may be something that just it's sort of locked in and we get the same response from the dish for an hour. Can we have default bypass for Firebase databases? I haven't seen them be blocked. I guess I'm curious. Yeah, I guess maybe reach out to support so we can dig into what server you're on that can access, because Firebase is one of the things that we have these IP quality checks for all of our servers, and some of that is reaching out to different parts of Google, like stuff that we control in Google Cloud. So if Google Cloud and Firebase is kind of under that, if that stuff is blocked, we should be knowing about it. So yeah, let me know, because that shouldn't be the case. We could certainly add it as a bypass option, I think, but I would hope we wouldn't need to bypass it by default, because it is one of the things we're looking at. Alan Waz, Google Nest Hub. Yeah, it always seems like, okay, this release, these things are going to be way smarter, and they're just, I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. Even my Alexa, I get so frustrated. Things that it has been able to answer well before, of like, when does my nearest club store close? And they're like, well, the optical closed an hour ago. I'm like, that's not what I asked you. That's not what I asked you. Yeah, I don't know. So a lot of bluster that finally Siri's going to be good. They're teaming up, and they're going to integrate Gemini with Siri, and it's going to be way better than anything. And maybe, I don't know. Kind of brings back to John Paul's. Anyone else think Gemini is trash? Yeah. It's weird. I was talking to a couple different people yesterday, and one was surprised that I've never used the Gemini CLI, which just never occurred to me to use because I don't really care. And the other one that thought that Gemini was the AI results in Google search, that's Gemini and it's always so dumb. I'm like, no, those are all different. Those are different things. I don't know. I don't really use Gemini. Do you?
I've only used it for kind of non-serious things, either asking it to generate funny images or, make up stories for my kids or something, or weird things like that. I don't use it regularly for anything serious. So yeah, I don't have a big opinion. I mean, for the few things I've asked it to do, it seemed okay, but yeah, I haven't extensively used it.
I don't know. Yeah, I think Google's got to be in a good position to sort of win, in the long haul, but I haven't seen it with Gemini yet. So kind of I'm in your group on that one, John Paul. All right, Starlink real stats. Love to monitor the raw speed second by second to compare to Speedify. Yeah, I could see that.
Okay. And I think there are history calls we can get with some of those stats, so maybe we don't even need, we can look into that. We might even be able to have graphs of some of that stuff.
All right. Ryan feels like his Google Home got dumber. Yeah, so I don't have Google Home, but I have a bunch of Alexas around the house, and I have Siri just by way of, I like playing music and podcasts on my AirPod, on my HomePod. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think hopefully they find the right way to plug into to these LLMs and just make them a whole lot smarter and more conversational. So Ryan is saying Gemini is powering Google's AI overviews, right? I don't think it is. I don't think Gemini is powering those AI overviews. I think that's a smaller model that has to have an answer in, 50 milliseconds or whatever, enough time that it can show up reasonably in the first result and be there. And so if you ask Gemini, it's going to be, a whole lot less tokens per second and a whole lot more thoughtful, and it's going to take its time getting you an answer. I think it's totally different models. So no, I think, and to get that model, I mean, people's search terms are used to just, they're like pharmacy. And so it's got to make sense. So, what's the AI overview if somebody just puts pharmacy in the search box? And if you're talking to Gemini, you're probably going to ask it, more of a question. And so I think those are totally different models with totally different prompts and kind of totally different expected response times by the users. And so no, I don't think Gemini is powering those AI overviews. Obviously, Google can call whatever they want Gemini, and we sort of see that with Copilot, where it's like, oh, you search for apps in your bar in Windows, so that's Copilot, and this thing looking at PR reviews, that's Copilot. Like, okay, all right, so dumping everything AI at Microsoft into the Copilot brand. Maybe Google's doing the same with Gemini, and it's really, these totally different things, and it's all Gemini. But I think when I'm saying Gemini, I mean their LLM that you can kind of converse with and use the CLI and do all that stuff. I don't know. So I said there's bluster that series is going to be good, but I don't. We will see. I think they obviously have the money and the motivation to do it, and obviously they have the time because it's been sort of the same thing for 15 years or whatever. So I think it's got to be good at some point. I don't think this will be the year though, but we'll see. All right. Where do we lean on IPv6 and IPv4?
So we actually had a big discussion on that last week, Alex and me. I think there's a video out about it. In terms of Speedify and what Speedify supports, we have built into the software support for IPv4 and IPv6, but the challenges we run into a lot are the hosting providers for our servers are kind of mixed on whether they support IPv6 or not, or whether it's a pain to do IPv6. So we kind of haven't rolled it out broadly across all of our servers. Something we'll probably get to eventually, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a mixed thing where IPv6 support seems like it's growing, but there's still a bunch of pain points with it in certain areas.
Yeah, so it's difficult for us on the the service side because we use a lot of different providers all over the world, really. And so we've got some of our servers are virtual servers, so they're virtual machines on boxes, and some of them are big actual dedicated hardware, and they're from a bunch of different providers. And so even across the same provider, we might have the same spec server in Denver and the same spec server in San Francisco, and it's all the same and it's the same provider. And the Denver one we could request and get IPv6 addresses, and the San Francisco one we never could. So it's like, okay, well, are they ever going to add IPv6 there? And the provider's like, I don't know, maybe. And so it's sort of tough. Like, what do we roll out then? Do we have, you sort of roll the dice and maybe you have a server that puts you on the IPv6 internet and maybe you don't? Or is it a new option? Do we let you request, a server that gets you on IPv6? I don't know. It's been sort of tough. And then on the user side, it's just, we have people that are like, great, if you guys supported IPv6, I could run, web servers and stuff at my house and people could access it on the IPv6 address and it would be great. And other people are like, why would it be any less secure than what you guys have now? You've got essentially this carrier grade NAT in front of you. And so I don't have to worry about people poking, ports in my house network because it's all, it's all secured. So do we make that an option too? I mean, people are excited about IPv6 because then, there's no more NAT and everything can be reached and you can run a server and be good to go and not have to punch through NATs and firewalls and things. And I don't know, it's tough. So there's a few things really holding us back from rolling that out everywhere.
It's the most common issue we see with users, though, are where they're on IPv6 only internet connections. Cellular, T-Mobile is one that's popular. That a lot of times they have IPv6 only connections, and there's NAT 6 to 4 things that you can use to translate, and that's often what we end up trying to use. But yeah, being able to actually connect to the server over an IPv6 only connection, I think is probably the most common IPv6 related issue that we run into with users.
All right. John Paul says, Apple's rumored new HomePod, but the screen could be so killer. Yeah, I don't know. Their stuff, every time they talk about a countertop robot with a screen that moves or whatever, I always picture the butter bot from Rick and Morty, where it ask it to pass the butter and it does, and it asks what its purpose is, and they're like, you pass the butter, and it's like, oh. So, I don't know. Maybe a countertop robot would be really cool. We'll see. I think having a smarter thing in the kitchen that sort of is always facing you could be interesting. All right. The Ray-Ban Meta glasses, those look neat. And let's see, there's other companies partnering with other glasses companies. Did somebody partner with Warby Parker, or am I making that up? I don't remember. But yeah, I think it's going to be a line of companies partnering with companies that actually know how to make decent looking glasses, like the Ray-Bans, that I think should be cool. All right. DL for fly. I have to live stream to a specific destination on a different port. Data is not recognized as streaming from Speedify. How do we help him out? How do we?
Yeah, so a couple options. So one, I mean, if you can let us know the detail, this is a kind of common service you're using, let us know in support, and we might be able to add rules for that can kind of benefit everybody, or we can look at why it's not getting picked up. But if you're kind of doing something unusual, if you are on one of the desktop versions of Speedify, Windows, Mac, Linux, where you have access to the Speedify CLI, there are commands where you can add additional rules of what we recognize as streaming traffic. So you could add, a particular port or a particular IP address or domain, whatever applies for your stream, and we can pick it up. So it's the Speedify CLI streaming command, and then there's underneath of that there's IPs and ports and things like that you can add to specify rules, and maybe able to add parts to our UI to have a front end to that on other platforms as well in the future. Now that we've done kind of similar stuff with the jitter buffer, there's other kind of back-end support for things that we have that we can add. Probably more support for bypass things and streaming in the future, being able to add these rules for IP addresses and ports and things like that for different purposes. But yeah, let us know. Reach out to support and let us know more details about what you're streaming, what protocol you're using, or where you're streaming to, or things like that. And if it's something that kind of can generally benefit people, we might be able to make updates on our end.
All right, VM Live Media Production wants nice Speedify wallpapers, skins for Raspberry Pi 5 acrylic case. I think we can help you out with that. Yeah, I think we can definitely help you out with that. I know having monochrome, logos and things certainly makes things easier for sending to an acrylic printer. Like a vinyl label printer or something. It'd be.
Yeah, reach out to support, and we'll see what we have that we can send you.
All right. So we talked a bit about using ChatGPT and Copilot and Claude and stuff. Does Speedify use it at all, AI?
So Speedify itself, the software, no, we're currently not doing anything with AI, to route your network traffic or anything like that. We've talked about a bunch of ideas of how we could use it. And actually, a few weeks ago, we did kind of an internal hackathon of different projects based on the theme of AI, either using AI to develop things or where we could be using AI in Speedify. So we came up with a bunch of ideas of where we could use AI in Speedify and did some proof of concept and things like that. But at the moment, current version of Speedify is not doing anything. But I mean, we do use Speedify AI for some of the development purposes to kind of enhance development for Speedify or some of our other pieces of infrastructure, things like that. So yeah, do you want to talk more about what we did with the hackathon?
Yeah. Here, John Paul. Why did people get so uproarious when it comes to AI art. Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know. I feel like art just feels different than software. And I think, a lot of like the open web stuff, you could do something really cool on a website, and the whole point was that you could view source and be like, oh, that's how they got the menu to be that way. And I feel like code has kind of always been that way. So I don't know. It just feels different. If somebody kind of makes a fake Avatar movie, it just kind of feels more like stealing to me. I don't know.
I definitely do think there are risks to AI coding, particularly people that don't understand what they're doing. If you're relying completely on an AI to do something, not understanding if it's doing something insecure or that's not best practices, or where it's pulling stuff from, I think there are risks to that, and you can get yourself in a bad spot or in trouble doing things. I find it, using AI as an assistant and kind of auditing what it's doing and watching what it's doing, at least in the current time, seems like the best strategy, not relying on it completely.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk hackathon a little bit. So a few weeks ago now, I think, we had an internal hackathon. I know we talked about it a bit on Speedify Live over the last few weeks. So the first thing I did for it was I hacked together an MCP server around Speedify's stats. So, Speedify has it has structured like statistics, events that you can watch either through the CLI. I mean, if you have the Speedify CLI, you can just run stats and it'll just dump a bunch of stuff all the time. So I was essentially taking that stuff and feeding it into a local database. So it was going into a DuckDB database on the same machine I was running the Speedify client, and I had an MCP server interface around that, so I could actually use Claude and talk to it about Speedify. Like, it understood what was in those stats events and what Speedify was and what the different parts meant, and so it could kind of put together queries around those numbers and hand them off essentially to DuckDB, which it would actually do analytics stuff, and so it could come back with these numeric results that I could trust because I could see that the query that it was producing, and I knew that it was the actual database, the analytics database that was doing the math. So it would come back and say that this percent of the time this was happening, and I felt pretty good that the number was right. So it's kind of an interesting way of just free form talking and kind of putting stuff together. So yeah, I built that MCP server. Maybe there's an audience for that. Maybe that's something we should put out and see what other people could do. I don't know if you guys have played with MCP server stuff at all, but it was kind of neat. So yeah.
For anybody not familiar with what an MCP server is, should we explain?
Sure. So Anthropic came out with this protocol essentially, and so it's a way of kind of plugging an LLM into other things. And so the way that it works, if you're running everything local, like a local MCP server, Claude actually opens up, it launches the process and just talks to it over standard input and output. So essentially like, command line sort of stuff. There's also ways where it can talk to, an MCP server over HTTP or HTTPS. But that's not what I was doing with the local one. So it was all just running, locally, and no network port in the mix at all. It was just running that process direct. So you can kind of describe, what the functions are and what they do and how it can use it. And, it just kind of adds more tools, similar to how you can ask Claude to, look at a web page or something. Now you can ask it to check Speedify stats from 3 o'clock yesterday and tell me what happened, that sort of thing. It was, it had all those stats locally. It worked. So what do we do with that, Kevin? What do we do?
So yeah, one of the things, once we had all these stats coming out of Speedify and going in this database, one of the things we talked with Claude about is, all right, how can we take all these stats and develop kind of a metric of quality of experience, or what user experience is. And so, yeah, I mean, it initially came up with some pretty good suggestions of, I'm going to take these stats and weight these against these stats, and, combining them in certain ways that kind of made sense. And we had a little bit of back and forth with suggestions. Okay, well maybe treat this a little differently or tweak this a little bit. And so it came up with a decent. I think if we're going to actually do that in production, we'd probably go back and forth and iterate it on a bunch more. But for a proof of concept, it came up with a decent kind of metric of incorporating latency and loss and bandwidth and different stats like that into kind of a quality experience metric. And so then once we had it kind of defined what this metric would be, we asked it to build dashboards based on this metric. So it would pull in a bunch of the stats that Speedify spit out and make dashboards showing your different number, your latency and your loss and your bandwidth over time, and then what the metric would calculate to. And yeah, it was pretty good at making these web dashboards. Yeah, I'd say it was good at doing a first attempt. It get you 80% of the way pretty well, and then it seemed to get stuck on iterating and doing some of the finer details. Asking it to change the color of a font, I'd go back and forth 10 times with it, and it still wouldn't change it. And it would tell me it was changing it, and it would get confused, and it wouldn't change it, and it would rewrite the whole thing, and it would just spiral in itself. Yeah. So.
I think making subtle changes, I think, to its output was by far the most frustrating thing. All right. Speedify support more product protocols, V2Ray, etc.
So I'm not familiar with V2Ray. Are you?
I don't. Yeah, I don't remember offhand.
So over the Speedify tunnel, we support anything that's IP based. So right now we're talking about IPv4 and IPv6, but anything that uses IPv4 over the tunnel, we'll support. So that includes TCP and UDP and HTTPS and QUIC, and basically pretty much any protocol you're going to use on the internet can go over the Speedify tunnel unless you're using something lower level. It's different, not based on IP. So we should support most protocols, but obviously there's different optimizations we could do for different protocols and making certain things work better. So you can give us more details about particularly what you want to do or what problems you're seeing. Let us know. And then obviously, Speedify has a firewall and NAT and everything that prevents incoming connections by default. So your protocol is dependent on anything coming in to reach your client. That's not going to work unless you have a dedicated server with port forwarding where you can allow certain ports through to your client device. So yeah, it's always going to allow outgoing connections from your client by default on any of their public servers.
Hey, Vadim. All right. So yeah, Laz was asking how we're using MCP servers. So I think what I talked about is my really only experience with actually using them. Day-to-day basis, there's no MCP servers that I use, and I don't. Is there anything that you use?
No. Yeah. I got a pop-up the other day in VS Code saying, you can browse MCP servers. I haven't looked at it yet, but to see what's available or what they can do. But it seems like they're working on integrating it in different areas. But I don't use anything regularly.
Yeah, John Paul wishes Canva and Claude actually worked well. Yeah, Canva would be a nice one. I know there's a lot of people excited for, if there was only a decent MCP server for mail, then they could make the mail client of their dreams, and probably true. I haven't seen that yet either. I'm guessing this time next year there's going to be a couple MCP servers out that we can't imagine living without, but today, that's not the case for me. All right, we're at 41 minutes. If you guys have any last questions, go ahead and post them. We'll do our best to answer. And if you don't already subscribe, go ahead, like us, subscribe, check us out on YouTube. I know we're putting out a whole lot of videos every week, so if you guys tend to like anything that we ever talk about, go ahead and like us on, follow us on YouTube and watch those videos.
And the other thing, did you see Anthropic's putting out a Chrome plugin for AI that they announced? There's going to allow you to do stuff in the browser and fill in forms and do crap for you in the browser.
Okay.
I don't know. they had a whole thing about security concerns and how they're testing it and how it can do all sorts of malicious things, and people can have web pages that tell it to delete all your emails or do whatever, tell it to do malicious things. So they're trying to put in protections against that stuff. So it seems like a early thing that they're working on, but maybe it'll be useful at some point.
All right, we have Miami PD police scanner. Hi. All right, from Miami. All right.
Welcome.
Okay. Do we support QoS rules for traffic speed adjustments?
A little bit. If there's something particular you'd want to see, but I mean, at base level, we have certain traffic that we can prioritize over other traffic. And so there's some stuff that we automatically, if you're in the streaming mode, we try and automatically recognize, video calls, real-time traffic, things like that, gaming traffic, that we'll prioritize against other stuff, so it's not getting bogged down by your OS updating in the background or things like that, or background downloads. And so you can also specify through the Speedify CLI, you can specify custom rules if there are particular IPs or ports or domains that you want to prioritize. You can set custom rules for that as well. And then we do have some support for other stuff with DSCP tagging, that you can specify certain behaviors for DSCP tags, including prioritizing stuff or sending certain traffic redundantly, or some other controls like that. So we have a little bit of QoS stuff that we do, and we do some kind of buffer bloat management stuff as well for flows that are trying to hog a lot of stuff. We'll kind of try and keep the buffers limited and keep latency low and things like that. So we do a little bit of a QoS, but yeah, if there's more that you'd want to see or other ideas particularly, we can. It's something we're thinking about a lot, that we could expand more.
All right. Ryan's asking how many connections we're bonding right now. Right now we've got Ethernet and Wi-Fi and a phone with parent share. So combining a couple Comcast connections and a Verizon wireless connection. All right. I think that just about does it for today. Thanks everybody for watching and asking your questions. If we didn't get to anything, you can either post it in a comment on YouTube or reach out to support@speedify.com, and we'll be back next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.